Officially, so good morning. That was not my voice. It was the other one telling people that the meeting is recorded. So good morning and welcome. Thank you for being here. We do not have a robust in-person audience yet, but let me ask Mr. Jones if everyone who has logged on has been admitted, or is it still happening?
It's still happening, but we have a good amount of people. We have about 44.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, welcome to everyone, here or virtual. My name is Jane Dolan. I'm the president of the board. And I will begin by calling this meeting of November 17th. That's incorrect.
18.
I'm notorious for always making a typographical error, so now that's my one of the day. I will begin by calling this meeting of November 18th, 2022 to order. We are conducting this meeting as we have and will in a hybrid format. So those of you who are in the room, we're happy to see you, and the fact that we can meet in person from time to time and every day. And then, of course, welcome people who are able to participate online or by phone. And we find, hopefully you have found as well, that it's convenient and appropriate for you to do that. And then you heard that this is being recorded, so I'll say that again. So I'm going to ask our board clerk, Mr. Jones, to call the roll to determine attendance and quorum. Mr. Jones.
Board member Ramirez is currently absent. Board member Grego.
Here.
Oh, he is? Okay. Board member Countryman.
Present.
Board member Bosler.
Here.
Secretary Johnson. Vice President Valines. Here. And President Dolan.
I'm here. So that is 6 of us, 5 present in the room, 1 online, Mr. Countryman, and we expect Mr. Ramirez momentarily. Let me just briefly, let me ask our executive officer or staff if we have any announcements or introductions.
Good morning, President Dolan. No, there's no new staff this month, and so no one to introduce you to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me just briefly go through the agenda. Our agenda process is we call each item by its number and its title. And if there is an action, there will be more of a discussion on that. First presentation by staff or whoever is to do that. And then I ask board members for their discussion. Then I go to people in the room who physically raise their hand or have filled out a speaker card, then to those online, then to those who've called in. If it's an action item, there is, of course, a motion, second, a vote, and a roll call. And I want you all to know that at certain times, at my discretion or request, I do call for breaks. It might be a couple times pretty brief, but if we seem to be meeting through a lunch hour, we will take a break for that. We plan to handle the agenda in the order that they are. We have the minutes, then we have a consent agenda with 6 items, and a thing on our agenda called public comment. This is for people who wish to speak to us about something that is not on the agenda, but we are by Bagley-Keene Act prohibited from anything other than receiving that information, not discussing, not acting. Then Darren Soon of our staff will give a legislative update or it's submitted. The Army Corps of Engineers report is not on this month's agenda. Department of Water Resources has submitted a written monthly report to us that we appreciate. The second DWR item, that is 9A, is linked to board item 10A. Both pertain to the plan update, and we'll discuss when we get to that item. Oh, wow, we're moving pretty fast. Our executive officer will present an action item regarding approval of and updating of certain regulations we've been working on for a while. Then we will consider approving a request from a local levy district to be included in the formation of a maintenance area. Then we will have reports from our various branches. overview of topics. And at the end of the agenda, board members, if we still have time and energy, we'll have a closed session on one matter. But unlikely, and it's going to be brief if we do have it, and we do not expect any announcements from that. And then we'll adjourn. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Welcome, Mr. Vice President. Welcome, Board Member Ramirez. You missed all the opening stuff, but you can listen to it. It's recorded. All right, we've done the welcome, we've done the quorum, we've done the review of the agenda, the minutes. Mr. Secretary.
Have the button again? Thank you. This was to be the September board meeting minutes. Board council and I noticed technical correction that we'd like to make, so I will not move to approve the minutes this month. We'll bring them back next month. Thank you.
Okay, postponed to our December meeting. Good. The consent agenda has 6 items. 2 are permits for bridge replacements. 1 is a permit to approve an existing residence. 2 follow presentations that we received with details and information at the last meeting regarding the transfer of operation and maintenance for repairs that have been made. And then the last one is a request to approve an amendment and a revision to the Delta Levy investment strategy allocations. The funding there allowed for another levy district to get some assistance. So these are items that will be approved with one motion unless someone of the board wishes to remove one for conversation. Board members? No? Is there anyone else in the audience or online that wants to remove one of these 6 items from the consent, or can we proceed to approve? All right, I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Moved by member Griego, seconded by member Bosler. Please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez, Board Member Griego,
Yes.
Board Member Countryman,
Yes.
Board Member Bosler,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Vice President Valines,
Aye.
and President Dolan.
Aye. The ayes have it. Approved. All right. Item number 6 is public comment. As I said, this is for something that is not on the agenda and someone wishes to communicate with us on a matter of concern to them. Anyone in the audience? No physical hands? Are there any hands up online?
No.
No. No phone calls? Okay. Then that is taken care of. Item 7 is legislative update. Mr. Soon, are you ready to give us some information? Don't tell us about the legislative analyst. Don't tell us about the legislative analyst.
Oh.
Sad.
With all the elections that just happened, things are changes amuck, and Congress has yet to approve the 12 appropriation bills. They have a continuing resolution that will extend till the middle of December. We're paying attention to, of course, the Water Resources Development Act that continues to be conferenced. But as of yet, we don't have any notice as to the outcome of that. That's all I have.
Find out about all the election results probably in the next week or 2.
Yeah.
Except for Arizona. Okay, thank you.
Very much.
Any questions for Mr. Soon? None from the board? Any hands raised? Nope. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, as I said before, we're going to skip item 8 because there is no presentation from the Army Corps. We always look forward to them, but it won't be today. Item 9A is a monthly report that is submitted in writing. looks like this. We appreciate that, and it's report of activities of DWR, and I like that we get that. No verbal report there. Oh, you have a
Hi.
question.
I don't have a question. I have more of a comment.
Yes.
And I really appreciate all of this is Keely Bosler. I appreciate all of the information in these monthly reports. I find it a little hard to get the context, and I'm wondering if we could start moving this and some of the other reports to more of a dashboard so we understand, how many miles they inspected of the total that they need to inspect. So we have a little bit more of a understanding of what progress is being made. And where we are. It doesn't lend itself in all categories, but certainly this first category, it seems like it could be converted to some sort of dashboard so that we could actually have a more rich understanding of the significance of the work that was done.
I see our executive officer making a note, so we'll pass that request on. Mr. Johnson? You didn't raise your hand, but you looked.
I did not raise my hand,
You look
but,
ready.
but I like this idea. I
Yes.
also found when I started on this, and even to this day, sometimes lacking the context for where we stand relative to where we're going, and having the updates is useful. But I think once we have something like a dashboard, which sounds right to me, it's a good presentation, and if there's a way to make that happen, I would appreciate that as well.
I won't go so fast with these in the future. Any other board members? Should have brought that up. Does anyone else want to make a comment on this?
Jane, I have one more thing. On page 4 of the report,
Mazza?
on
Yes.
page 4 of the report, there is a note about DWR making some awards, including some 6 awards that are in the Central Valley. This is from Proposition 68 bond funding. And so I was just wondering, it would be helpful to bring into context for us at the board, and maybe we're very aware of these projects and we've already done approvals around them, but just understanding how these new funded projects fit into our plan.
That's good. We can go to that link when we see this online and see those who had it. But yes, another instance of let's put this toward the goals that we've made and the work that needs to be done. I'm looking at your screen to see if you have more notes there that you want to share.
I'm just interested in a staff briefing on the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency Smith Canal Closure Structure Project at some point, just because I want to get up to speed on that.
Yes. Yeah. No, thanks for that. Thank you for your input. It's going to make it better. Appreciate that. A little embarrassed we didn't do it, but that's why we are glad you're on board. I went forward a little too fast here. Excuse me while I shuffle my papers. I've got it. Well, I didn't expect to get to item 9B by 9:27 in the morning, but here we are. This is one that we expected to be a little more energetic this morning. And 9B, as in Bob, and then the next one, 10A, under board items, the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan 2022 update are related, of course. And this first one, 9B, was for plan preparation team headed by many, but I'm going to say Mary Jimenez was to give the presentation of what was to be the changes in the plan between what was first published in April, is that right? And then the update that was put on notice and on everyone's website and email in October 14th. Yes, I'm looking at Ruth Darling, who remembers all these dates, so it's that. But because circumstances arose last week that indicated that there were just some technical and textual changes, minor is what I've been reported to the plan, that we need to postpone the adoption to our December 16th meeting. It is not an uproar. It's not a massive change. It's just a move to make it certainly be too precise with the agencies. So if Mary Jimenez is online and wanted to correct anything that I said, I will ask if she wants to. But the report presenting revisions in response to all the comments will be postponed as well. So, is she online? We don't see an MR. Okay.
She is. She has her hand.
This is Mary Jimenez. I'm online. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I think the only thing I would add, President Dolan, is that I believe the most recent versions of the documents online were posted November 4th. But other than that, which you said matches what I've been tracking as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the November 4th posting, does that include the changes that are the reason we're delaying?
No, not yet. We will
Not
be
yet?
incorporating those by December 2nd to meet the 2-week ahead
Okay.
requirement for December 16th.
All right, I remember that. Yes, we do post things 10 days in advance, so December 2nd, there will be that. And from what I'm seeing, it'll be quite a search to see what the changes are. They're not long. So thank you for explaining that and correcting the dates. Any questions for this matter for Ms. Ramirez? Don't ask me because I'm getting the dates wrong. All right. So just a note here that this item will be as it is on December 16th without the word postpone. So for board items, Ruth Darling, it was to present the adoption proposals and have the board do that. Do you want to make any comments today, Ms. Darling?
Thank you, President Dolan. Ruth Darling with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. I think I would just like to note that there, as President Dolan indicated, there are minor wordsmithing and editorial changes that have been requested to the plan. In the call to action, in the forward, so the forward is the joint letter between the Director of DWR, Carla Nemeth, and Board President Dolan, as well as one sentence in Chapter 1 and one sentence in Chapter 4. So we will be informing the public of those changes through what we're calling an errata. So that will be published on the board's website. It will also be circulated via an email blast. So our partners and the public can be aware of what exactly was changed in the version from November 4th into the version that needs to be posted on December 2nd. So that 2-week period prior to adoption. And then what will be on the website on December 2nd will be the revised version of the flood plan, as well as the board's resolution of adoption, which is Appendix A currently in the flood plan. And we'll also have the errata posted on the website. So the detailed information of what's changed between November 4th and December 2nd.
Thank you. And I wanted to clarify, the resolution that was posted, assuming that we were going to take action today, is the one that got revised between last meeting and the
Correct.
meeting today. Because I read it and it's, if I could be so bold early on, I think it's great. And I really appreciate the work that was put in by board members Johnson, Ramirez, you, and others. I did joke a little bit that it was 19 pages and 79 whereases and 14 things were to do, but every single one of them is appropriate.
Right. So after the October board meeting, board member Bosler requested revisions to the call to action. So those changes were made. We added 3 items from the resolution to the call to action. And then there were also requested changes from board members as well as our local partners on the resolution. Those changes were made by staff and posted. So everything that was requested on October 28th was reflected in the posting on November 4th.
That's what we intended. So it's good. I know you pay attention to that. We were all giving you suggestions. So that you're the one who wrangled it all. So thank you for that.
And then the only thing is the signature page is currently blank because the board hasn't formally adopted. And when that occurs, that blank signature page will be replaced with a wet signature page. So it'll be a complete resolution with Board President Dolan's signature and Secretary Johnson's signature.
And it definitely gives us our goals and marching orders.
That's all I have unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Darling? Any hands up? Well, I think we got the word out that there was. Oh, Member Ramirez, you're so far away. Wave your hand. I know, you need to be closer. Good morning.
Just to turn on. Is it on? It's on. Great. So just to be clear, post on the 2nd, here on the 16th. And I just wanted to make one observation and connect the dots to the earlier request about the report from DWR. This might be a good chance to take a step back with some fresh eyes as well, which I think is really important, and think about the kind of information that we'd like to see monthly next year and include some of the things that are in the board's resolution for the plan, and maybe talk to the department with staff and maybe with some of the officers or board members. I'd be happy to be part of that if it's helpful. But just to reboot the information that's shared on a regular basis so that we could both track the resolution and the actions that are in there, but also try to glean insight from the department about the things that are the most relevant that we really do want to hear about here on a regular basis, the things both in writing and then the presentations that they could make. It's a good chance, I think, to just take a step back and ask that question. I'm glad that it was raised this morning. So maybe we can just make that a New Year's resolution for 23 after we take action in December and have some discussions about how to set that up. So it's really a little bit more strategic. I think it's gotten a little stale, and that's not meant to be critical of the staff. I think this is a good chance just to ask some questions and make sure that we're asking the right questions and getting information that is responsive. So maybe we can do that, President Dolan, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Member Bosler, I think I'm determining the two that are going to meet with staff on this. Member
Oh,
Bosler.
no, I just want to follow up on what Mr. Ramirez said, because I agree with him as well. Like sometimes it's not more, it's actually less information, but more strategic. And so I also think that it's really important that we have an opportunity to meet with people from outside of the flood management branch at DWR, just because everything that we are looking at here is through a multi-benefit lens. And so there are a lot of other activities, projects in the Central Valley happening in other parts of DWR that I think are relevant to our work here in implementing and overseeing the big picture of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. So I would definitely want to pursue that meeting and maybe a series of meetings to help strengthen and focus their input into the board in our work here.
Thank you. Any other board members? All right, I'm going to ask that the Member Bosler, Member Ramirez meet with staff on this. Whether it can be all accomplished by our meeting in December is unlikely, but it can start. And I think it's a process, not a specific endpoint. So thank you for doing that. We all have interests, but we have to keep it to 2. So, and our executive officer is making notes. So thank you for that. Okay. So if I thank you, Ms. Darling. So if I went too fast, let me just say, for any item up to this point, not consent, because we already did that. The DWR report, the legislative report, Any other questions that popped up regarding the plan that can't wait until our meeting in December? I'm going to end this meeting by 10. Okay. Are you ready to go or do you want a break? Okay. Right after you, we will. Board item 10B, as in blue, is consideration of adopting a resolution to approve revision to the California Code of Regulations, Title 23, Waters, Division 1, Title 23 is what they call it, but we might change that to board regs. Our executive officer, Sarah Backus, has worked on this item and she will present the matter to the board and the resolution to approve. Good morning.
Morning, President Dolan, Vice President Belines, and members of the board. I am here today to request, I have some slides. Does
That
it
sound great. Can
There
you
we go.
be a little
Is that
bit-
better?
Is that better?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm here to request that the board approve Resolution 2022-31, which allows the staff to move forward with the final rulemaking package to the Office of Administrative Law, Administrative Law for revisions to Title 23. And these are sections 25, 28, and the addition of section 28.1. And you may recall that I came before you, those of you who were on the board last year, last December, and got approval to go forward. And we did submit our rulemaking package to the Office of Administrative Law, and they requested a few changes, all of which I would consider minor. But the change was to clarify that objections to a proposed revocation would have to be made within 30 days, calendar days of issuance of the notice. So the reason for this rule update is the current regulations in Title 23 are regarding revocation of permits are the same regardless of the reason for the revocation. So we may have a permit revocation that's contested. But in many instances, we found that they're uncontested. The encroachment may no longer even exist. And it just doesn't make sense for it to be such an onerous process, which is requiring, a 30-day notice by certified mail, a preparation for a hearing. It takes a lot of staff time. So staff has long thought that it would be nice to have a way to do it when it wasn't that difficult, when it wasn't going to be contested. So where are we? There we go. Slide 2.
As I recall, in some cases, the permit holder couldn't be found.
Yeah, also. Could you go on to slide 2, please? So, so this is basically restating what I just said. We renoticed the rules for 15 days on September 1st through the 16th. We put it on the website. We wrote letters and emailed people who are individual or organizations who maybe have an interest. We received no comments. Last year, we received one comment from the Department of Water Resources, which we resolved and clarified. Next slide, please. So under the new rules, the bases for a revocation of encroachment permit would be, first one would be that the encroachment doesn't exist and or no longer exists, and the property owner or permittee wishes to surrender the permit. Second one would be if the encroachment no longer exists, then the current regulations would not authorize the previously permitted encroachment. 1 year, third one is 1 year or more has elapsed since the board issued the permit and the encroachment has not been constructed. Fourth element would be if board staff has determined that the permitted encroachment is an element of adopted plan of flood control, in other words, not really an encroachment, a private encroachment. 5, the owner wishes to remove the permitted encroachment and surrender the permit. And in that instance, the new regs would require that removal of the permitted encroachment be done under the supervision of the board. And finally, the encroachment no longer exists due to a completed flood improvement project. So those are the grounds for a revocation of a permit using the this new administrative process. Next rule, please. I'm sorry, next slide, slide 3. Actually, slide 4. So we have created some procedural rules that will ensure that there is due process to the permittee or the current property owner. And these would require that notice be made to the permittee or the current property owner, if that's a different individual, that the notice include the permit number, the date of issuance, the reason for that we want to revoke, and the address or coordinates of the encroachment. We'll state that the permit will be revoked by order of the executive officer and allow 30 days from issuance of the notice to object in writing to the proposed revocation. This notice must be mailed to the permittee and the property owner and posted on the board's website with other items that are delegated to the executive officer. The order becomes final in 30 days if no objection has been received. If an objection is received, the board will follow the ordinary revocation process. Next slide. Oops. I think proposed action, I'm missing it, that one, but in any event, we're asking that the board find that adoption of the proposed rules is exempt from CEQA, and secondly, adopt resolution 2022-31, which authorizes the executive officer to take actions necessary to finalize the rulemaking package. Are there any questions?
Turn to green and notice on. Thank you for that very complete recitation of how we're correcting something that actually didn't need to be so detailed in revocation. If it doesn't exist, no one can be found. We now have a way to do this without following the strict regulations that we should for things that are bigger. Board members, any questions?
Yes, through the chair.
Member Grego?
How many of these situations do you think are out there?
A lot. That's Steve, I saw him. Lamb, head of our permitting section. Do you have any idea, Steve? Or Eagle? I think there's hundreds.
Hundreds. Wow.
Hundreds if not thousands. So these are on our books as encroachment permits. But there's valid physical, legal ownership reasons that they not be. But our process is challenging because it should be if we're going after someone's encroachment. And so this one allows that to clean the books. So it took a while.
Yeah. Well,
President Dolan?
No, I would just, everyone says, when can regulations be more efficient? I think we're working on it.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
For Johnson?
And I would be prepared to make a motion if you like.
Okay. Just let me see, anyone else?
I just want to say that I appreciate staff bringing these types of, these types of rulemaking to the board, because streamlining the process is important to get them off the books. And so I appreciate the work that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, as soon as I came to the board close to 4 years ago, it was something that people talked about. Like, there's no way we can do this.
And if anyone thinks this can be done quickly or capriciously, just wanted to point out this one took a year. So there's very careful indication of this so the public is protected, and that's what we want. Any hands up? No hands up. All right, then a motion to, but there is a hand up. Member Bosler.
No, I just wanted to add my voice of appreciation as well. I think that there's only so many hours in the day and we have limited resources. And so these kinds of efforts really allow us to work smarter and more effectively. So I appreciate this, and I'm just dismayed at how long it takes to get things through OAL. But other than that, I think this is a really good step forward, and I look forward to further board reports about all of the permits that are going to be removed from the books. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I may.
Yes, the motion would be in order. Member Johnson.
I just like to echo the comments here and thank you and everyone for the work on it. There's a very clear statement of need for this, and the reforms are well crafted and will make the process much more rational and do provide a mechanism for due process and to ensure that it's being done correctly. And I'm very happy to see it moving forward and would like to move that the board adopt the revisions as stated in agenda item 10A.
Someone just whispered in my ear.
Did you make a motion that I didn't hear? You did?
Just
Okay.
right there, I did.
I was interrupted
But
by,
I move that we approve the revisions to the regs as stated, as set forth in the staff recommendation for item 10B, excuse me.
I'll go ahead and second that motion to include that it also is exempt from CEQA.
do you accept that, Member Johnson, to include the findings of CEQA? All right. So the resolution, the motion is to approve the resolution before us, which includes many things, including the CEQA findings. Is that clear enough? Okay. Any comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez, Board Member Griego,
Yes.
Board Member Countryman,
Yes.
Board Member Bosler,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Vice President Felines. Aye. And President Dolan.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam President, may I just make a quick comment?
Of course.
I just wanted to acknowledge all the staff work that went into this and all the review, but Eagle Lang, Steve Lamb, Jeet Dua, Angeles, Caliso, and I'm probably missing some. It was a real group effort, and they were always got immediate response. So very lucky to have that good staff.
Thank you for saying that. I agree. And thank you all for your effort on that. This definitely is an improvement in our process here. I'm going to do what I said I would earlier, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. Reconvene. We are at board item 10C, as in clever. And this is, Darren Soon from staff will give this presentation asking us to adopt a resolution regarding Reclamation District 817's request. Mr. Soon.
Thank you, President Dolan. Good morning again, everyone. I wanted to also take the opportunity to wish everybody a happy early Thanksgiving. I forgot to do that earlier. So what you see before you today is the RD 817 request for maintenance area formation, and specifically, it's a portion of their system to be included in the RD 784 maintenance area formation process. And so I'll talk a little bit about that next. So the next slide, please. So just want to remind folks of things that have transpired. Back in October of 2019, RD 784 submitted a letter to this board asking to transfer their maintenance responsibility for the horseshoe area levies to the state. Subsequently, on May of 2020, RD 817 adopted a resolution requesting the state to assume maintenance responsibility over this portion Unit 3 levy segment if the RD 784 maintenance area formation process proceeded forward. Last month, or excuse me, 2 months ago, September 2022, this board directed your staff to form a maintenance area over the horseshoe area. The large gap in time is, there was a lot of, as a reminder, there's a lot of conversations with the communities of interest and some local legislators, representatives of the area in an attempt to find an alternative solution to a maintenance area. However, subsequently, when those talks stalled in September, your board directed us to begin formation of the maintenance area. So here we are in October. RD 817 adopted another resolution affirming their desire to include the Unit 3 levy segment in this maintenance area formation process for the horseshoe area. So here we are today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I just want to give you a graphic or vicinity of this vicinity map. In the Yuba City area, you see in the Yuba City in the northwest corner there, or the upper left corner, it's about 12 miles. You can see the shaded area, the purple is the area contained by RD 784. There's another purple there in Wheatland, that's actually RD 2103. And then the green area, RD 817, and you can see the red portion is the Unit 3 levy segment that we're talking about. Next slide, please. So this is just a closer up of the horseshoe area. Again, you could see the Unit 3 levy segment for RD 817 in orange. Just as a reminder, the horseshoe area for RD 784 is contained by you see the green line and then the purple line. The purple line heading to the top of the page and then angled over. That is the RD 784 levy system that the decision was made in September to proceed with the maintenance area formation. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, that's 1.5 miles. So I also want to remind the board, so per water code, that when a local maintaining agency decides it no longer desires to maintain an area or unit segment of their levy, the board, we shall proceed with a formation of a maintenance area. So there's very limited autonomy for the board or the state in this regard.
Discretion.
Discretion. Thank you, President Dolan. Next slide, please. So today, requested board actions are first to please find direction of staff to include the RD 817 Unit 3 levy segment in the horseshoe area formation. That is not a project pursuant to Public Resources Code 21065 CEQA guidelines, which basically says that it doesn't have a direct impact or a future indirect impact to the physical environment. And then direct staff to proceed with including the RD 817 Unit 3 levy in the horseshoe area maintenance area formation in accordance with water code. So if that's approved, the next steps would be the board and DWR will work with RD 817 to develop a statement of necessary work, and we'll bring that back to adopt at a future board meeting similar to what was done in September. There is a subset of this process that I'll talk about in the next slide. And then we'll proceed forward with the rest of the maintenance area formation process outlined here in water code. And I've got a graphic representation of this on the next slide, please. So this, I'm going to thank Flood Maintenance Office for this. Their department prepared this a while back. So you can see here, we're basically at the couple steps here, this red area highlighted by the arrow, where between the board and DWR staff prepare a cost estimate of preparing that statement of necessary work. We'll take that back to RD 817. They will pay it, and assuming they pay it, we will move forward with the green area up there, those two boxes, that then the actual work of preparing a statement of necessary work is done, and then we will bring it to the board for adoption at that time. Next slide, please. So again, I'm just coming back to the requested actions for today. Requesting the board to find that this is not a project according to CEQA guidelines, and to direct staff to proceed with including this levy segment in the horseshoe area maintenance formation. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the PowerPoint. Thank you for showing that in color, because what I receive is in black and white, and it's shades don't quite make it. Very helpful. Questions from board members for Mr. Sloon?
Chair.
Member Grego?
So after 784, we did the process to put them in the MA area. What kind of conversations came out of that from the locals?
Yeah, most recently we're in conversations about how to, the methodology to determine the impacts to the area, and then subsequently, how do we assess what levels of benefit to those areas? And that's the topic of conversation at this point.
So by putting 817 in there, then they spread the cost even further out across property owners. Is that correct?
Yeah, there would be a proportional share of that part allocated to the whole area, and whatever properties are protected by RD 817, that levy segment in RD 817.
And so there has to be some kind of analysis based on the amount of maintenance that has to occur out there. And is that something we do internal, or is that something we contract out for?
We have consultants on staff to do that, to look at the hydraulics and hydrology to develop that area, and we'll ask them to do a benefit assessment to give us levels of benefit, because there are some areas that'll have deeper flooding than others, and so we'll want to vary the assessed amount in accordance with that. But that full conversation about that methodology is what we're still talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, not to get into too much technical detail, but yeah, there's a lot of conversations about that. How do we go about actually analyzing that area right now? And we will bring that forward when we, excuse me, apologies. We'll bring that forward when we present to the board the map, the inundation area. That methodology will be presented at that time.
Okay. And for the folks that are impacted by this in the Horseshoe area, what's their recourse? I mean, like, when you're at the Board of Supervisors, you usually have reconsideration. When you're at LAFCO, you go directly to court. What is their recourse in this process?
Well, they would come to the board here and give public comments, all of you on the board, and seek direction from this board in that matter. There's always legal recourse.
Okay.
And then there's always, in my opinion, there's always conversations with the RDs to find other solutions.
Okay. All right. Because, the gist of this was that it's the cost, and it's the philosophical issue of development that's across the highway, that they should be carrying the burden of that. And, when 784 did the assessment around the Plumas Lake area and further out, it was all based on that area, and it was promised that that would only be used for that area. And so to include them into that cost is going against what the folks had assessed themselves for. And there's the legal problem right there, that they cannot carry the burden of the Horseshoe because of those legal issues. The development across so when they did an assessment for the Plumas Lake residential area, it was based on that particular geographic area. So the Horseshoe, in some of the discussions that I've heard, feel that the development should be paying for their maintenance across the highway.
Piece of it, right?
Yeah. And that's not something that I believe that was part of the agreement when they assessed themselves. It was for this side of the highway.
And that was a vote of the people?
That was yes, anytime there was assessment, there was a vote of the people. So there's the problem. And I don't think that an MA through the state is going to be any cheaper than what 784 or maybe 817 proposed. I think it's going to be expensive. And so, I kind of see with my crystal ball where this is going to go. And, in the meantime, what happens to that area as it relates to maintenance or improvements? Does it sit in limbo is my question.
It might very well be in limbo.
I think I answered my question. Thank you.
No, I mean, thank you for that. It's very helpful information. But as I understand it, the position that the board is in is we have two reclamation districts that have requested a maintenance area be formed, and that we do not have discretion to say we don't want that. So the formation process will go, and perhaps then there'll be some resolution to these concerns, costs, questions, allocations. And I actually think that's a better way than everybody suing each other.
And I think because when 784 was here, I was hoping that that kind of discussion would happen between the locals and the RDs, you know, that they would come to some resolution. And I'm still hopeful for that to happen. But I understand the position of this board has to move forward.
Okay, I know that Member Lyons wants to comment. Is that right? Go right ahead. Turn your mic on. And then Mr. Countryman.
Thank you very much.
I saw your hand, Joe.
I think you answered the first question. Thank you. That it sounds like their recourse is to come, they being the locals, would be to come to the board. Because on the chart I saw, there's a public agency protest, but I didn't see like if you weren't a public agency. So that would come here to us.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's perfect. Thank you. Do we know, I know you and I were chatting about this, so, or we can find out, maybe it's out there and I'm just the only one that doesn't know. What is the actual cost of maintenance of this section?
Yeah.
So, you know, what are we talking about cost-wise? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I don't have that number offhand. If is Tom Engler, do you see Tom Engler on the, you're talking about the mile and a half, correct?
Yeah, and not to put you on the spot, I mean, I just,
No,
I
that's
would
okay,
like
yeah.
to know eventually. I'm curious, what are we talking about cost?
I think that analysis, if I could say, I think I'm right. That's the next step that we will receive.
For the state, if the state were to take over, what we will.
If it were to be a maintenance area, these would be the costs.
Correct. But if Tom Engler, I think Tom may have the number, like what the RD is paying today, or at least the order of magnitude.
That would be really helpful. So,
Yeah.
you know, what is it today? What, and potentially when we look at it, what is it going to be?
Yeah.
And that comes with everything you laid out there. So I totally understand.
All right, now that you've said Mr. Engler's name twice, he raised his hand.
Thank you.
Member Countryman, I'm going to call Mr. Engler to answer that, so we have like at least a stream, then I'll get to you. Tom Engler, you're up.
Thank you, President Dolan, members of the board. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. So the RD 817 currently collects about $1,800 a year for this mile and a half of levee. We do spend a little bit more than that. We use a lot of FMAP and FSRP type funding to do some of the larger work. But my understanding is the statement of necessary work will determine what the state will be paying for that. Typically, we're in the $7,000 to $15,000 a mile range for operations and maintenance. This particular mile and a half of levee had numerous district responsibility culvert drainage pipes. We have repaired 2 of those. We are currently replacing 1 that will be done this week or next. And there's 1 more that's being considered under 408 right now for repair that will take care of all the pipe issues in this mile and a half of levee. So we'll be pretty close to being under an acceptable condition after this year. And the number itself is difficult to ascertain because we include this mile and a half in the rest of our district. So I would have to go back and do some analysis to figure out how much I would say it costs here. But we typically assume $7,000 to $15,000 a mile.
With more specificity to follow as this process goes on. Mr. Valines, more? Okay. Member Countryman?
I think the problem that we're facing here is that we do an analysis of the benefit so we can distribute to the landowners what their share of the cost will be. But there's no benefit cost ratio. And if I understand what the local people behind the levee are is that it's going to cost way more than the benefit and could potentially bankrupt them. And that's why they're fighting so hard against this. Now, if I understand, we don't have an option. The code says we shall form a maintenance area. So we have a real problem here. And I don't know how it can be resolved, but we may have to take an action that's really very detrimental to these landowners. And so it's just my comment.
Thank you. I feel that as well. I think we all do. This is awkward. We like solutions. This one doesn't seem to present one just yet. Mark List, did you wish to add anything to this? If so, you're on. Good morning.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Tom Engler, I think, answered the question. I guess I'll add to his point. The deferred maintenance pipe program is funding DWR's implementation of the deferred maintenance pipe is funding those replacements and flood system repair project. So these are, again, examples of program implementation to reduce the backlog of flood risk issues in an area. We can't provide the number yet as to how much the state will need to collect to appropriately operate and maintain that, as was mentioned, will be part of this process, assuming the board wants to include this in the formation process already going on with RD 784. We will proceed, issue a request for funding estimate. We're preparing that presently, reviewing it and getting ready to send it out as soon as this action is completed. Assuming it's a go, we'll request 817, RD 817 pay that. We'll deposit that and begin working on the staff effort to evaluate what appropriate O&M would be from the state perspective on this particular 1.5 mile stretch. We've already done that, as you saw in September, for the RD 784 portion of the Horseshoe Levee. And then once those two come together, at some point in the future, if the board proceeds with creation of a maintenance area, DWR would take that over once the assessment zones and all those other details are addressed in a couple more board meetings. That's all I had to add. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that.
I have a question for Mark.
Actually, all right. Member Countryman, and then Mr. Reinhardt. So Member Countryman.
Mark, I'm wondering what the order of magnitude is, like Mike requested. We don't need a precise number, but just maybe a range of cost per mile or something for that area, just so we have a general idea of what we're talking about.
And I honestly couldn't provide that now because we have not looked at this levee. So I don't know what the condition is. I can look at inspection results and other data. But until we actually put folks on the ground, likely with Mr. Engler out in the field with us, looking at the levee that they operate and maintain currently, I couldn't even venture a number. During our maintenance area budget presentation each year, I try and provide our range of costs, and what Mr. Engler laid out for this is, a non-urban system out here. The order of magnitude he laid out per mile is not outside the typical scope of what we see and what we have, but I can't give you a detail at this point without seeing it. Over.
Thank you.
Yes, we can go to Vice President Lines, then Mr. Reinhardt.
Using my entire year of comments in one little section. I apologize. I don't usually.
Now you're just getting going.
If I'm not breaking a rule, if I am, then I won't be serious. But whoever could get that answer, I'd be happy to buy coffee for, and we could sit down and talk through it. I would love to find out, just generally, as Joe pointed out better than I did on my own question, what are we talking about? So whoever, this is now a game. Whoever can do it, let's have coffee.
Okay, I'll give it a shot through the chair.
Member Grego.
Oh, that was for the public, not board members.
Wow, we'll talk later about that. So I guess the question I have is what 784 proposed to the horseshoe for an assessment. Because I know there was some dealings in that, and there has to be some analysis behind that cost. Maybe that would give our vice chair some understanding of the cost of maintenance. And maybe Rick Reinhardt has the answer to that question, and he can get the coffee.
Mr. Reinhardt has requested to speak, but I do take board members first. Mr. Reinhardt, you're up.
Thank you, President Dolan. Well, first, in response to Board Member Griego, yes, RD 794 did develop a cost. I don't know that off the top of my head, but what I do know is what it translated to for an assessment per acre, and it was a big number. And you've had the property owners testify to that. The original number was upwards of $80 an acre, but there was a proposal that was, they tried to negotiate to bring that down to about, I think it was about $24 an acre. And that was rejected by the majority property owner. The problem is, collecting a reserve and paying for these pipe repair projects that have since been funded through DWR's maintenance program. So Board Member Valines, the numbers are out there. And those can be gathered, and I'll work with Tom to try to get you that information of what 784 is looked at anyway. But the comment I wanted to make was actually to Board Member Countryman's point about the land use behind the system not generating the revenue to pay today's fund today's level of OMR&R. And this is really a policy issue that affects many other districts. We're seeing these districts that were reclaimed in a time where the cost to maintain the levees was very low, and under today's O&M standards and environmental requirements, those land uses no longer generate the revenue to fund OMR&R. We saw this with RD 2098. MBK is the district engineer for 2098. We knew that was an unsustainable district. And what happened? EIP came in, and now we have the Lookout Slough project. The same has happened with the McCormick-Williamson track project. There's a number of these districts that just don't have the land use to support the assessments that are needed to meet the OMR&R requirements. And so I would think for you to think about this as a policy perspective as you run into other districts. What is the approach going to be? Because when you form a maintenance area, it is going to be a real problem for those property owners. And maybe you start to work with DWR to look at, is there a project that opens it to transitory storage or some other use that provides benefit to the system that would relieve those property owners of that assessment. So just wanted to make that linkage to your broader efforts with Centralized Flood Protection Plan. Thank you.
Through the chair, can I kind of follow up?
Yes,
on
thank
that?
you for that. Member Griego. Yeah,
So, for me, I look at these type of areas as very important. Not are they zone agricultural, but they're part of the Pacific Flyway. I mean, if you go out there, you're going to see thousands of birds that flock in that area. I saw it this morning on the way up here. I think that, in order to detour rezoning and residential building in areas in order to qualify, for those type of assessments, we want to make sure that we keep open space open. And, as they have in the San Joaquin area, subvention plan. I mean, the state's got to be part of the solution as it relates to these issues, because, I know that for like in the north side of Marysville, District 10, this particular area is not unique. There are other areas in California they're going to be facing, and they're watching what we're doing here today because they don't know which direction they're going to go into. As Rick stated, they don't have the ability to pay the assessment for the amount of maintenance that is required for these open spaces, ag land, grazing land, Pacific Flyway, whatever, but they're important to California. And so, we've got to try to find some resolution in this.
Thank you. Mr. Engler, you want to weigh in again? You're up.
Yes, I was just going to point out that we did do two different assessments that kind of get to the cost answer. One was through the Feather River RFMP, where we did a region-wide governance study about basins that could be consolidated to improve O&M and reduce O&M costs. And then we subsequently did a separate study for just the Horseshoe Basin and the Wheatland Basin. So I don't recall what the numbers were, but I do recall that the big drivers of those numbers, if you were to form your own reclamation district in the Horseshoe area, you have to come up with your own overhead. You have to get staff. You have to have an office. You have to pay your insurance that's currently, spread out over the rest of RD 784, the rest of RD 817. And when you just put it into that basin, it quickly drives costs up. So the actual cost of the levee maintenance goes way up because now you have to support these other things. And then as Rick Reinhardt mentioned, the cost of pipes and having to put a reserve aside to repair or replace those pipes when they exceed their useful life or see damage gets to be fairly expensive. So I'd be happy to share those studies for any board members that are interested. I can get those to Darren and he can share those as needed, but those will kind of break down what the costs are, and they're fairly high.
I'm sure of that. All right. Trying to figure out, does this help the discussion if we push forward with this resolution, or do we want more information of all and answers to all the questions asked today? I don't know. Member Bosler.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated several of the public comments bringing clarity to this issue, and it's reminds me of when we were just down in Madera, and I took the chair because I'm the new person here, so I'm doing a lot of learning right now. But took the chair aside, and I'm like, who's in charge of zooming out and really looking at what projects could help the overall system without just looking at this one little segment of the levee. And so that is exactly like here, I would like to have better context of the region. And I turned to my plan and the regional section of the plan because I want to understand. I mean, I get that this is a very the law says we must, that we shall, sorry. And I get that, but then how do we actually move forward on improving the flood protection in this area to protect property and life? But these issues of balancing who pays and what do we do, I think there's a lot to be figured out on that. But it's still the thing that I understand is there is a chasm between the people who have been maintaining a system that was built many decades ago and who is coming to the table with the ideas and the projects to improve that system, which is maybe not doing exactly what we did for the last 80 years or 70 years. So we do need to be a part of the solution. I think I heard someone say we need to come be part of that solution. The state needs to be part of that solution, and I think we can be. But this is just one small project, or one small area of the system, but I think indicative of the big challenges we have throughout the system.
It is one, but it is an example of many. So other requests like this could come forward, and they're troubling. So what do you think, board members?
I would say we need to move forward with this.
Move forward, and then we'll try to get the answers as we move forward, Mr. Countryman?
Correct. This isn't a final determination. This is just letting the process continue to work.
Through the chair.
Is our discussion ended? So that I can accept a motion? No. Member Johnson?
Thank you.
Like this. I don't like this.
Board Member Countryman, I have been quiet here because I'm thinking this over. But I agree that the actual question before us today is a much more narrow one. Is whether to consider the RD 817 part with the RD 784 part and move those forward together. And that seems smart to me, regardless of the outcome of the rest of the conversation we're having. But the rest of this conversation we're having is really important, and we need to work with the local folks and with DWR and our staff to frame these in a good way for us to be able to grapple with these questions that we've got here today. So I'd be comfortable moving forward with this vote with, I think, all of us now saying that this raises some really thorny issues, and we should be very thoughtful about how we frame those as they come back in future stages.
All right, is any more conversation, discussion before someone forms a motion? Which, oh, Mr. Engler, are you still, have your hand up? Still want to talk? Mr. Engler?
No, I did not put my hand back up. Sorry.
All right. Thank you for putting it down. I like to have input, but not once we begin to repeat ourselves. So it seems to me that what we're moving toward is the board adopting this resolution, which gives, which makes the findings necessary under the Public Resources Code for CEQA guidelines and directs staff to proceed with this information for this formation. But we would add to that direction to our staff to take the comments and questions and concerns raised today and work to provide information and strategies to the board. Would that be the motion?
Can I just add to your
Of course.
direction to staff a little bit, if it
Member
helps?
Ramirez.
I couldn't help but think back to the earlier action we took on the regulations. Old language, 21st century, needed to be different, takes a long time. We're still living in that framework, but we made the changes and it's going to be better. And it just feels like, although we're going to move forward, most likely, this is another example of that. We're only able to push so many buttons, and it's not just unsatisfying, but potentially not a good idea anymore to do it this way. And we might need another button to push. And so besides bringing back questions and comments, I think we shouldn't burden the staff with feeling like they need to stay within the current structure of the system. If there's a recommendation that we need a different path to walk down, to take that step back and to recognize the grander landscape, I think that's a fine place to end up as well. And I think we'd be happy to help navigate that if that's where we end up. Because there are lots of these examples, and I think we've seen enough of them to know that we might need to build a better mousetrap. So just wanted to make sure the staff knew that we didn't want to restrict their ability to generate potential solutions, not just comments.
Thank you.
And that would be added, not just bringing forward information to enter the discussions here, but to look at solutions. Yes, good point. We just had one where we had just outdated rule to the way that things need to function and operate in this 21st century. So perhaps something as old as maintenance areas that came about the year I was born are dated.
There is some things we're
Not me,
thinking
though.
about, so I really appreciate those comments.
Okay. So who would like to craft a motion? Staff recommends that the resolution be adopted, which has two findings, directing staff to proceed with this and making the findings under the resources code of the CEQA.
I'll go ahead and make that motion as recommended by our staff.
I'll second.
We got a third. Member Grego makes a motion to adopt the resolution with the findings that are there. Was that you, Mr. Countryman, who said second?
Yes.
I'll take it. Seconded by Member Countryman. Please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez. Board Member Grego.
Yes.
Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Board Member Bosler. Secretary Johnson.
Aye.
Vice President Valines.
Aye.
President Dolan.
Aye. I think the transcript from this meeting is going to be very helpful to our board staff. Wow. All right, it is 10:42 by my watch, might be a little fast. And we have concluded the parts of our agenda for which we are to receive specific information and/or take action. So item 11 is a section of staff report, executive officer's report. So we have a written report received yesterday on board's administration. We have the activities of the operation branch, flood system improvement branch, environmental services and land management branch, flood planning and programs branch. And I've said this before, so I will say it again. Starting in 2022, we will pull forward one of these for a presentation. So instead of this very helpful receiving it that we receive and we internalize and we can ask questions, we'll bring one of these branches forward for a complete highlight for a discussion. Board comments and committee updates. The coordinating committee is going to hold what is called a 10th anniversary committee meeting on Wednesday, December 21st. It will also be, what will be included in this meeting is a viewing of a documentary movie, which is approximately an hour long, of the efforts throughout a century for Yuba County to address flooding, modernization, protecting people, and water supply and irrigation. I've had the opportunity to see it. It's amazing, and it's really reflective of what leadership and hard work can do, and it certainly is an example of what's going on in other parts of our state. So hopefully folks can come to that. 10 years of a committee that really has moved projects, information, cooperation, and success forward. And it was a brainchild of this board. So we're going to continue to promote that. And it was an amazing amount of effort over the last 10 years of all of our local partners, our state agencies, and the communication that came. So we're going to celebrate that. Look at a good movie and celebrate that on Wednesday, December 21st. Then going forward, we have December 9th is a board workshop. We're not meeting in this room. We're meeting at the Sacramento Area Council of Governments room, and their address is something L Street. Does someone know that?
Ryan says he'll put it in the chat.
Well, it will be in the chat, but one of you lovely people Google it right now and tell me. 1415 L Street on the third floor. So not so much good parking on L Street, but there's two surface parking lots very close and walkable. So that's our workshop of December 9th. The board meeting of December 16th, for which we are targeted to formally adopt the plan, which we will because we are required by statute to adopt it before the end of 2022. And that meeting will also be in the Sacramento Area Council of Governments conference room. 1415 L, as in Learn Street, Sacramento. Okay, those are the known meetings that I know about. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to do a brief closed session. This is my thought. Keep this meeting open. The six of us, plus Mr. Dua and executive officer, go into this little chamber between the two exits. I'm serious. And that will be our executive closed session room. We will talk for what I think will be, if you listen to me, 6 minutes, knowing the rest of you, it might be 15, and then we'll come back. Okay? So we don't have to shut anything down. And we'll announce, my prediction is we'll announce no solution. So the purpose of this closed session is pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision A1, and for the board to meet together to just discuss the activity of recruitment and appointment of the executive officer. So Y'all go there. Faster you go, the faster we can come back. Adjourn.